Welcome to episode 71 of the PHP Town Hall podcast, Forging the Happy Dev. We are joined today with our friend from across the ocean, James, who, funny enough, is the third Laravel employee we've talked to in the last 65 days. So, Taylor, that check better start cashing soon. I'm just saying. James, how's it going?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. Like to note, we're recording this at 5 o'clock my time, so James is up at 11, which is usually a normal time for developers, but it is a lot to stay up and talk to us too. So super thanks for doing that. Ben, Boston, Wayfair, how's life?
Life is good, man. It's warmer these past couple days. Like it's in the 30s today, which is toasty, but it's not too bad. I'm getting adjusted.
Cool, man. Cool. So, James, I think people are starting to kind of I just found out about you not too long ago. You kind of snuck into the whole Laravel job and ecosystem and stuff. Can you kind of give us a little bit of background, like how you got to where you are today and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, so I started learning to program when I was 7. I'm now 28. And I started with PHP when I was about 14 or 15, and it sucked. So I left it for different languages. And then I got my first job when I was 18. I finished college early, and I was doing IT support and help desk EPOS software development in VB6. And then I got a job at a travel company, Blue Bay Travel, and that was my first PHP job. I'd been making a blog and forums and chat rooms and all sorts of things with PHP, but always on the side, never for money. And then I stayed at Blue Bay for the last 8 or 9 years. Kind of worked my way up from PHP developer to lead developer to software development manager. And we made loads of different things working in travel. Although it's a travel industry, you spend a lot of time not making travel related stuff. So we made a custom CRM, custom CMS, everything was bespoke at Blue Bay, because it needed to fit with some crazy APIs, APIs that nobody else knows of, that no one's ever going to use. But we had to, so we made a lot of packages, internal packages and whatever. So I'd been using PHP for quite a while. And then we actually started rewriting our CMS in Node.js. But it was super early in the Node.js coming up and whatever. And so it was buggy, memory leaks all over. And I was well, we've got this deadline, we need to rewrite it. Scoped out a few frameworks, found Laravel, and I was immediately drawn into it. It had great documentation. I basically recreated a quotation system within a couple of hours, super basic CRUD stuff. And so since then, that was 5 or 6 years ago now. And then been using Laravel ever since. And it kind of reinvigorated my love of PHP. It's the language sucked previously, but it's so much better than it was. Sorry. And then
I think that Laravel single-handedly saved the language.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So then I started. I was working on an open source project called Cache, which was a clone of status page.io, and that became super popular, which was crazy. And then from that, I kind of started to speak to other people, Graham Campbell, Joe Cohen. And from that, we started working on Style CI, which is a PHP code fixing service. And then it kind of evolved into web language fixing stuff. And through that, I then started speaking to Taylor. I went to the Laracon Louisville in 2016. Which was really cool. And then from that, I was able to convince Taylor to let me do a little bit of work on Envoy, because there were some things that I really wanted it to do and it didn't do. So that's kind of how I started working with Taylor. And then I was listening to a podcast one of the ones that Taylor does, and he was saying that he was potentially looking for a new employee. So I was like, well, cool. If I'd be super interested in the job if it came up. Like, I've always been really happy at Blue Bay, but if the right thing came up, I'd go for it. Anyway, a bit later, I heard back from him. He was like, you've got the job if you want it. And then he announced that at Laracon last year, and I was on holiday with my wife and daughter, and like my phone blew up. It was like 11 o'clock, and I just got like hundreds of new followers and tweets and everything. And it was really cool. Like, all of a sudden, I had this massive audience, or massive to me anyway. And then, yeah, that's where we are today.
Should call that like the Taylor effect or something.
Yeah.
Our biggest episodes by far are the ones with Taylor on.
Yes, Justin Jackson said the same thing, I think, with their Build a SaaS.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Taylor Otwell effect, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he can, if he wants to give us money, we're not going to say no. we have to fund our drinking somehow. No, that's a really cool story, especially how Taylor's like, hey, here's a job if you want it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's kind of like your dream job almost, just having it handed to you instead of like having to jump through all the hoops and the processes of an interview and all that good stuff.
Yeah, super fortunate for that.
Yeah. So the other thing that you do is in direct competition with us, but we're friendly, so we decided why not, was you started a podcast. I think, was it super late last year or early this year, kind of around that time?
Yeah, so it was late October. I think I put out the first episode on maybe like the 31st of October, which was really just a teaser to be like, see if anyone's interested in it. And yeah, so that's done like 7 episodes, but one's a trailer and one was a bonus episode. So 5 actual interview episodes. Yeah.
Cool. And so, I mean, what was what was the motivation behind like jumping into the whole podcasting thing? Like, was it something you've been playing for a long time, or just kind of an idea to hit you middle of the night and you're just like, I want to do this?
Yes and no. So August 2018, and I obviously was really, really sad, and it's a tragic loss. So I was gutted, and I knew that I wanted to do something positive from all that negative energy that I had. So I organized, there's a charity in the UK called Papyrus, which is like a prevention against suicide charity, and they offer a helpline and everything. And I think it's every October or November, they do a charity walk, which they call the Hope Walk. And I set up that Hope Walk in memory of my brother, and I think we raised like £3,000 or something. I might be over marking that, I can't quite remember, but it was a few grand anyway. And so we did that, and that was really cool. But I wanted to do something more than just organize a walk for a different charity. So I'd been thinking about wanting to do a podcast anyway, and I'd been mulling it over for ages and not really. I kind of felt, if I'm honest, I kind of felt embarrassed to say to people that I want to do a podcast. Like it's a bit of I didn't know the format that I wanted to do. So whether it would be kind of just a discussion with myself, like just blurting out thoughts that I had, an interview podcast or whatever. And because I didn't know what the format is that I wanted to do, I felt kind of embarrassed about the idea of it. And eventually I sort of mentioned it to my wife, Katie, and she said, well, yeah, go for it then. Like, you need to decide on what it is that you want to do, like what kind of format, but you've got this audience now, so people, and you can open doors up that way anyway if you want to speak to different people. So I recorded an episode using like a trailer with my Beats earphones, some royalty-free music and GarageBand, and then I got into bed and played it for my wife, and she just cried. So I was like, well, I'm not feeling very confident, but apparently it was with pride. So I then went and bought.
This is so bad.
Yeah, I genuinely thought that. Like I couldn't quite see what was going on, but she was just like crying and tears were in her eyes, and I was like, "Well, is that good? Is that bad?" And I'm like, the whole time, I'm just embarrassed that I'm hearing myself talking, and
It is the worst.
it's horrible, isn't it? Like I'm slowly getting used to it now. I'm editing episodes a lot, but
The only worst thing is like hearing Matt talk.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's why we pay people to edit this podcast.
It's a good
We don't
idea.
want to listen. And we all like I pay for the APIs you won't hate podcasts. We pay for people to do that because I refuse.
Yeah, it's tedious as well, isn't it?
It's
yeah. I mean, people have suggested to me like, why don't you just pay somebody to do it? But there's two reasons for that. One is that like I want to tell that person's story really well, and I want to make sure that it's done to the best of my ability, not somebody else's ability. Like it was the conversation I had with them, and we're talking about very personal things. So I want to make sure that like things that they don't want, like you can tell in the conversation that something doesn't need to go in. So I want to get rid of that, and I don't want to take away from that story either, where it does potentially get quite deep.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's so like intimate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the second thing is that obviously that costs money, and currently, well, up until recently, I've been covering the costs. So I pay for like Transistor and Epidemic Sound and the domain, which equates to like $40 a month, which is fine because the way I see it is that's my charity donation. But earlier this month, I set up a Patreon page and started thinking about sponsorship on the actual podcast itself. And so now 2 people have donated on the Patreon, which means that I'm actually covering those costs now. But regardless, like any money that gets donated, I cover the cost of the podcast, or what it costs to produce and whatever, and host it, and then the rest of the money will be going to different charities. Like I'm not pocketing from it at all. I want it to go and actually be of use to people.
That's a really cool idea. So it doesn't like make people afraid to give you too much, kind of. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I don't want to capitalize on that kind of. I don't like industry is not the right word, but I don't want to be a charity myself.
Mm-hmm.
As in not a charity case, but an actual charity. Like I want that money to go on to charities that have already been set up, that are already providing use. Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean that stuck out when I shared the article you wrote with Ben. Like that was like the first thing we looked at was like, wow, that's really, really cool. Not something you would see every single day. You know, people being so selfless about that kind of thing. So like, what is like you said your wife's reaction was she was crying and you had no idea if that was good or bad. But like, what is like the overall community's reaction kind of been to the episodes you've released so far?
Overwhelmingly positive, which is crazy because like as you guys I'm sure are aware, putting a podcast out, people putting anything out publicly, you're just opening yourself up to critique and abuse, especially in like Twitter. But I can honestly say that I've had nothing but positive feedback. Like I after I kind of ran through the idea with my wife, I took it to the guys at Laravel, and they immediately were super supportive. And Dries signed up to do the first episode before I'd even committed to anything, and Mohammed as well. So yeah, it's just honestly it moves me really, because I'm just the way I see it is that all I'm doing is having a conversation with someone, talking about some things which albeit are very personal and delicate, but then spending a bit of time to edit it and putting it out for other people. But the value that seems to bring for people is far reaching.
Yeah, I mean, and it was also, you know, I mean, like one of the things that really struck me about the last episode you did, which I was just looking it up, and it looks like it was Jason McCreary, which I'm really good friends with him, and every time I talk to him or I see him, like he's got to be like the most cool under pressure. You can never tell anything is ever wrong with him, and yet like getting him to open up was incredible to hear because I always look at him as like the pinnacle of like what I want to strive to, which is, as someone told me, like being a duck, like on top of the water, like ducks just kind of chilling, no one really cares, but underneath the water, like they're flapping their little feet furiously, which is just my overall general state of everything. And so like, it was like the way you got him to kind of open up and talk about things was just incredible. And I don't know if that's your accent or like how did you do that?
One of the things that gets commented on quite a bit is my accent, and I don't know whether it is just that people just feel comfortable talking to me because I'm politely British, and honestly, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I can ask questions that maybe even friends wouldn't always ask. Maybe not close friends, but like friends that you hang around with occasionally, like even they wouldn't ask sometimes. And I think part of it is the fact that just asking if somebody is okay is enough sometimes. And also, I guess because I approach people ahead of time and I have a form that they fill out, which goes through like some basic questions, like tell me about your experiences, tell me about you. Are there any things that you don't want to talk about? And so like with Caleb, whose episode's going out on Wednesday, he has like a crippling fear of vomit. And he said in the thing, like, I don't think it's really relevant or whatever. And we had a bit of a discussion about it prior. Like he didn't say explicitly it was the fear of vomit, but that we could talk about it if we wanted to. So I was just intrigued and asked him. And that discussion kind of led to him being more open to actually talking about it and seeing it as something that might help people as well. So I think just asking people, just talking to them. I don't know what it is about me that makes that happen, but I just ask the questions.
It's really cool. I mean, it's good to have like a space for that conversation, right? Because so many things in life are professional or personal, but maybe it's not personal in that way, right? So I really appreciate how you're kind of blending the two, right? Like you can be this professional person who's known in the community, but you're still a person, and that encompasses the whole thing, right?
Yeah. I try to. So there was an episode I did with Jess Archer, and when I sent her like the draft episode, she said her feedback was, "It's great, thank you, but I'd like to hear more of the conversation that we had, not just their story, but also kind of the bits that I'm going back with, my experiences a bit more." So I have started to include more of my sort of like conversation, I guess, which I did especially in Jason's episode. I'm doing in Caleb's because I'm still editing it. But yeah, hopefully that kind of shows through. Like even I think people forget. It's the same with celebrities everywhere in any industry. Like people forget that they're human. And I think you look at people like the guys at Sparty and Taylor, Adam Wather, and Steve Shoga. Those people that are like prolific creators, and you actually have a conversation with them, and they go, "Well, I don't know what we're going to release next year. Like I'm out of ideas for things." Like they're worried about what are they going to produce, what are they going to bring to the table next time. And but everyone's looking at them like, "Oh, you're a god. You're always switched on. You're always making things or whatever." But it's not actually the case. And I think just kind of having that humane side to a conversation, doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah, I mean that's something I speak for OSMI every so often when I like decide to submit to conferences and stuff. And that's one thing I've always noticed is people will come up to me and just thank me for making some topic like that, humane, because they don't know how to talk to their boss about it. And so I'm the one breaking that barrier down for them. So if there's any other way to like add humanity to this industry, I'm all for it. And that's who I think, that's where I think like your podcast will really help out for sure.
Thank you.
So this is PHP Town Hall, and I think people would probably like unsubscribe if we didn't talk a little bit of code for 20 minutes. Since you're a Laravel person, I'll just go ahead and assume you made your website with Jigsaw.
I did, yeah.
So
crochet.
I know. You Laravel people in your silos. Jeez. That's not true. Actually, I work with Laravel like all throughout the day too. So we kind of noticed like every Laravel employee kind of like, I hate to say this, you do work in your own silos, funny enough. What parts of the Laravel ecosystem are you kind of working on maintaining and adding on to?
Yeah, so there's three things. Nova, which is the like back-end admin dashboard stuff. Envoy, which is zero downtime deployments even. And Forge, which is server provisioning and deployments and like server management sort of stuff. So when I first joined, I was working solely on Nova, with a couple of fixes to Envoy and Forge as I kind of came across them and was looking around the source code and whatever. And so we've made David Hemphill, who kind of leads the Nova project. Him and I made a lot of releases last year when I came on board, and we went from like, I think it was like 300 issues or something down to 60 or 30. I just kind of went through and like closed a lot of the ones that are old, and then people think that if a project isn't moving, it's dead, which isn't the case at all. But I guess it didn't help things, so we kind of went through that and cleaned them all up. And then I'm now currently focused on Forge.
So with Nova, I admittedly haven't used Laravel in a few months now. Is Nova still very active? Because I don't know, it feels kind of quiet in Laravel land.
Whew, I guess, yeah. Well, so we switched to a 2-weekly release cycle. And a lot of the
as in every other week, or is it twice?
Every other week. Sorry, yeah, not twice a week. Yeah, sorry.
Slow.
Yeah, so Laravel releases every week. But for Nova, a lot of the things don't really need to be out. Like we'll occasionally push out patches or whatever if that's needed. But yeah, we try and do it every other week and include new features or bug fixes or changes or whatever. But yeah, that is a slower release than the rest of Laravel, I guess.
Cool.
So, I mean, can you tell us what's coming next? Like, what is that cool thing Taylor's going to do at Laracon, or do you know? Are you sworn to?
Nope. Nope. But what I can tell you is that I'm currently working on automatic database backups in Forge, which is pretty cool. It's a much requested feature.
That would be incredibly useful for the team I'm on. Like that would be awesome if we could add that.
Yeah. So
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say it works with you connect your Amazon S3 account or your DigitalOcean Spaces, and then you just configure the frequency of the backup, and then basically you're done. You can restore backup immediately, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's gonna be cool. What was like? So I'm always curious. What was the ramp up time it took you to, I guess, get comfortable working on such a huge open source type company and project?
Yeah, well, it was very different to the jobs that I've done. I think so. I don't really do a lot with the. Well, I don't do anything with the framework stuff. So the open source-ness of working at Laravel doesn't really affect me too much. I think so. I also manage the support tickets for Envoy and Forge, and that was a bit different to what I've done previously, like having to respond to all the tickets and also trying to debug issues, because Forge is a pretty massive project. And it's when you get it, like it's really easy to figure out what's going on. But initially it was quite a deep dive that I had to do into Forge, and like just loads of debugging everywhere, and everything runs in queues. So that took a while to get your head around.
Can you talk about the internals? Maybe this is available somewhere that I'm not aware. Is it actually written in Laravel, like the internal server administration part?
Yep. So everything uses. So a lot of what happens is Forge executes a queue job, and then that runs a bash script on the actual server itself. So it's quite a big mix between PHP and bash.
Okay. Is it running in containers, or is it directly modifying via provider APIs, or what's it doing there?
Are you talking about the servers individually?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Forge connects to DigitalOcean, AWS, Linode, and I can't remember the other one, but there's another one. And essentially, we use the APIs for those providers to spin up a new server, and then once that server is created, it hits a callback, and the callback uploads a script, and then it runs all the bash stuff. So it's none of it's like Dockerized or containered.
Okay. So you're using their APIs directly. So you just have like do this thing, and then you have an adapter to each provider?
Yeah, basically for creating the actual server, and then we provision it by uploading essentially SFTP. We upload a bash script that's kind of generated using Blade, and then so we can insert all the variables and everything, and then that just runs through, installs packages, configures different sites or whatever, and then done. Yeah.
Nice. Is that how do I put this gently? Is that stressful? Like, it seems like the support issues you would get on that would be vastly more stressful than the support issues on the other products, just because people, maybe they broke their site or the provider's down, and they expect you to fix it.
Sometimes. I think because it's a paid product, there's that expectation of support for things that aren't necessarily in the realm of what we would do. So like people that want to configure mail on the server, for instance, that's not something we would do, but we would send them a link probably to a DigitalOcean article because they cover like everything, but we wouldn't actually set that up for them, but we'll investigate things if that helps them.
I mean, how annoying does it get, like, if DigitalOcean goes down or AWS goes down and everyone's hitting up like y'all's Twitter to let you know? That can't be like the easiest part of the day.
Oh man, Amazon SQS went down back in October.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So all of our, well, I say all of them, Forge and Envoy and Vapor as well, I think all used SQS. And so no jobs were being dispatched, and people were clicking buttons like nothing's happening. And then I think we replied to like 300 issues in an hour, just basically, we're aware of that. SQS is down. Go to the status page, and we'll update it from there, because we cannot physically reply to every person to say, yeah, that's done now. There's Taylor, Mohammed, and myself that respond to support tickets for those products, and it's just, I mean, having been on the other end of that kind of situation, I understand and appreciate the frustration, especially when you're trying to deploy into production and like inevitably there's a critical bug that you need to get out. And that did happen. People couldn't deploy the websites, so we gave them instructions to deploy that manually. But I think it's just worth, like, yes, it can be frustrating when you're replying to the 278th ticket of the same thing, but they don't know that, do they? Like, to them, it's their issue, and you just gotta
consider one ticket, right?
Yeah, especially when it's something like that doesn't happen very often. And we also use what they're called, saved replies for a lot of them. So if there's an issue that happens a lot, then we will just save a reply for it. But recently, actually, I did rewrite all of the documentation for Forge, and that covered a lot of the issues that people have frequently. So that's helped.
Now,
So-
do you have a lot of issues with people not referencing that documentation, or how do you drive people there?
Yeah, people don't check the documentation. We're all guilty of that, though. Yeah. So I just link them to it. I tend to copy the snippet that's relevant and send them a link to it, and then at least next time they have the link to documentation.
I mean, I'm sure Mohammed bitched the other day when I asked him a very stupid question on Twitter about Forge, so I get it.
I didn't see that.
I was just wondering, I just want to know what the Git branch I'm on is in the Forge API, and he's like, oh, it's right here. I'm like, man, if I just read the documentation, it probably would have been very clear.
We're all guilty of that, though. 100%.
Yeah, I know.
How do you, maybe you yourself, or how does Orgo as a whole kind of split up the support aspect versus the new dev or innovation aspect, right? Do y'all think about this in terms, or you just kind of take it as it goes, or what do you do?
So Taylor predominantly deals with billing issues. And then Mohammed and I tend to get through the support tickets by the morning. It helps that we're all kind of in different time zones. So Mohammed and Dries are 1 hour behind, 1 hour ahead of me, sorry. And then Taylor is like 6 hours behind me, so 7 hours behind them. So there's a crossover period, which is really helpful, actually. And then Mohammed and I tend to respond to the tickets on Envoy Forge. And Mohammed also picks up Vapor tickets, and then David does all the Nova support tickets, not the GitHub issues. And there's also the Spark tickets that Mohammed and Taylor deal with as well. And then Dries handles all the open source package ticket stuff.
That's a lot. Is it hard to context switch between so many different things all day?
I don't find it that tough. I actually feel like I work better by having that kind of period of different context, like a reset for me. I can go back and so long as I've reached a point, but then we try to resolve tickets as quickly as possible, but we're not constantly refreshing the inbox to go through it. So we just check it occasionally, and then if we've got the time, we'll reply to the ticket. Yeah, so I don't find it too hard.
It's cool.
Was it hard working across so many different time zones? You said Dries is 1 hour ahead, and you said Mohammed is too, but
yeah,
that seems kind of like I would have thought Egypt was an additional hour over, or my conception of Europe is terrible. But
oh yeah, sorry. Now we're in DST now, aren't we? So yeah, Mohammed's 2 hours ahead. Dries is 1 hour ahead. There was a period where Dries and Mohammed were in the same time zone, and then I was still 1 hour behind them both.
Oh my god, we had to just say how daylight savings time is dumb.
Oh man,
Yeah.
It's like every developer's nightmare, isn't it?
I thought they were trying to get rid of it. I will vote for someone to do that.
I'm sure it'll go away when America switches to the metric system.
Yeah, that'll be after we die.
Exactly.
Yeah, we still use DST as well, so that's BST.
I mean, isn't it weird that we sell milk by the gallon but soda by the liter here? I mean, it seems kind of weird to me. We should just, Ben, you're talking, but you're on mute, by the way.
It's the wrong button. I want a gallon of soda, please.
Do what?
If you just said I want a gallon of soda, please.
No, we sell milk by the gallon, but we sell soda by the liter.
No, I'm just saying say it out loud, and it just sounds so weird.
1 gallon of soda, please. That sounds way better. Or 1 liter of milk. That sounds fine too. Either way, I think that we should take Prince Harry and Princess What's-Her-Face back over here and adopt a metric system in transit. I think that's easier. So, so one question I asked Dries that I thought was really cool, and this is so it is a known perception that the Laravel developers like to do their own Laravel things. What are like what is a package or two packages that are non-Laravel specific that you will always rely on, you will always reach for?
Good question. Non-Laravel specific. Let me just see if I can find the name of it.
Googling. That's cheating.
I'm just trying to remember if it.
That's PHP packages.
Yeah.
The phpleague.org or whatever.
Actually, Glide was brilliant.
I don't even know what the fuck that is.
Which one was Glide?
That's it's based on intervention.
I don't know what that is either. Oh my god.
Image manipulation.
Okay.
Oh, that's Jonathan. I'm gonna say his last name wrong, probably.
Yeah, Renink.
Yeah.
Renink. Yeah. It's one of those that you read that's different to how it's said. I'm sure it is.
Yeah. Well, he's Canadian, so that's just expected.
How would you say this French?
Well, part of them is French up there, so.
Yeah, it's.
No, yeah, this is a really cool library. I always forget about it because I don't do a lot of image stuff, but the few times I have used it, I've been really impressed by like how clean the API is and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a really nice. I built a whole like flat file image like store manipulator kind of API for my last job, and it was fantastic. If I ever needed to do anything with images, that's where I would go. And then Guzzle, because like writing an API without it is a nightmare.
You can't not choose Guzzle.
Yeah,
it's
like standard, isn't it?
Guzzle's just like standard.
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Well, we know it's getting late over there. We don't want to take all of your time. We don't want Taylor to get too mad at us for keeping you up late and not being terribly productive.
On a school night, yeah.
On a school night. So if people want to find you online, James, where are the best places for them to find you at?
Twitter, GitHub. I use the username jbrooks without an E, JBROOKS UK everywhere.
Cool, awesome.
And the podcast.
Your podcast, yep.
Yeah, so that's happydev.fm, or on Twitter it's at happydevfm.
Cool, awesome. And you said the next episode will probably be out after or before this one gets released. So if you haven't checked it out, you said Caleb is this week, I think?
Yeah, Caleb Porzio.
So Caleb,
if I finish editing it.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have like 2 weeks or so before we launch this, so you have plenty of time.
Okay.
We still have to fix our website, which could take a month. Who knows?
Yeah. At the rate we're going, it's going to take a while.
It's like every builder's nightmare. You know how like a builder's home is never complete because they spend all the time building other people's?
Well, the worst part is we didn't use Octopress, so it's in Ruby, so we have no idea how it works. It's just a black box.
Should use Jigsaw.
We should.
I mean, we could. My blog is on Jigsaw, and I know what I'm doing with it.
There you go.
We can blame Phil Sturgeon for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. James, thank you so much for staying up late and hanging out with us. It's super appreciative. We'll definitely have you back on soon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks.
Bye, Ben.
Bye.